All right, welcome back. This is Lesson 8, Arrays and Array Lists. This is for Computer Science 20 at Ladue Composite High School. You can watch this video, pause it at any point. Please make sure that you're taking notes and not just listening to me talk. This is a tool for you to use and go forward with and go back to so that you're able to complete all the assignments and projects that are in Computer Science 20. Okay, so Lesson 8, Arrays and Array Lists for Data Structures. First of all, we need to know what an array is. And an array is just a collection of elements of the same data type. These elements are also called components of an array. Each element of the array is accessed using a unique index value, and that is called a subscript. Arrays are used for data storage. So when you are putting in, say, a user list, you might use an array. Now I used the term list there. We're going to get to an array list. One of the things with the array is that they are set size from when you start it. When you declare the array, you set the size of the array. You cannot expand it. It's kind of like a tuple if you think back in Python versus the list. But an easy way to think about it is if you have a storage unit, or if you've seen storage units, the owner of the storage facility builds however many storage units that facility is going to have, and then for the most part they don't add any more, so that they can only rent out so many units, and so much stuff can only be stored in that spot from the people. So if it's filled, then that's it. It's full. There's no more space. Essentially, this is what an array looks like. You're using a data type numbers here, and each number has its own individual box right here. So number 100 is in position 0. This is going to, I'm just going to get a pen here. This is position 0. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So just like excuse me, copy. Just like normal functions, normal lists, and whatnot, we start at position 0 and move forward from there. When you're declaring an array in Java, the general syntax for declaring an array is as follows. So you have your type. So if it's an array using ints, it would be int, and then your array name. And then you have your 2 square brackets and a semicolon. So that's declaring a Java array. So you say the type, and then you have your array name. It does allow for another syntax for array declaration, and that's type, and then your square brackets, and then array name as well. If you are declaring an array, the type array name, although it allows for both, convention discourages declaring the array the first way. So we'll go back. So this is not actually the way that most people use. This is the conventional way, the second one. Type, square brackets, and then the array name. Square brackets indicate the variable you want to declare is of the array type, and type indicates the type of element that the array is going to. So you've told it with the square brackets, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be creating an array, and the type of it is, so if you're putting integers, or if you're putting doubles, or if you're putting strings, or whatnot, that is what is going to be in the array, and they all have to be of the same type. So it makes more sense to have the brackets appear with the type designation. So that's why you put the name last, right? That's why you put the name last right here. This is the data type. This is the array. And then we have our array name right there. So the square brackets in this syntax are also called the indexing operators because they specify the index of an element in an array. The type specifies the type of element that the array is going to store. And the array name specifies the name by which elements of the array are addressed in the program code. So creating arrays. So now that you know how to declare an array variable, the next task is to allocate space for the array elements. So to allocate space, you have to use the new keyword. So this would look like int array numbers, numbers equals new int, and then we're saying that there's a space for 10 numbers in that array, in this line of code. So like this is saying that there's 10 little spaces, so 0 through 9 positions in that array. So you can fill up to 10 integers into that array. So the first statement here declares the variable called numbers of the array type with the data type integer. Okay, so numbers, array type, data type, int. Second statement allocates contiguous memory for holding 10 integers and assigns a memory address for the first element to the variable numbers. So this is 10 stored in numbers. Accessing and modifying array elements. So now that we can create an array, we need to access array elements, and you can use the index to access the elements of an array. So each element of the array has a unique index value. So like that's the position that it's in. So if you have integer 256 in position 3, all you have to do is you put the array name and then the index value. So it'd be array name. So this would be like system.out_print array name, and then the place that you want that element to print, and then that'll print out. Okay. Each element of the array has that unique index. I don't care about space. Okay. Accessing array elements using a subscript. So, like we said before, we have a position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in this array example here. So we have our numbers array, and in position 0 we have integer 100, and then 1 is 150, and 49, 3, and 225. If we wanted to access, say, this part right here, maybe you want to do some arithmetic with this value, we would use numbers 2. And that would say to the computer, okay, we're going to go to the variable numbers. That is an array type. We're going to go to index value 2 and then access the number stored in there. So then we have 49. So when the subsequent elements will be accessed using this syntax. So you have numbers 1, that is position 1, numbers 2, that is position 2, and so on. So the last element is numbers 4, even though it is the 5th element in the array. And if you understand this reference, I'm really proud of you. Multipass. Now, adding to an array. So in an array, we use the array position equals element syntax to add to it, right? So that is, so this would be numbers. This would be position, so that would be 3, for example, and then we would put 49 here. Okay, so we need to remember that the size of the array is declared before we actually add our elements into it. So you will get a huge error if you try to add elements in the declaration of your array. Like, I know before you could declare and then initialize variables before. That does not work with arrays in Java. You have to declare it first and then you initialize it and fill it later. So if we forget to do this, we have not actually created a block of memory large enough, and we can encounter data loss and different types of errors that come with that. So make sure that you're always declaring your array first and then adding elements to it. An array list is similar to an array, but it is quite different. So the downside to declaring an array is that you have to define the size of the array before you fill it. You don't always know how many things you want to store into it. Maybe you want to add users' phone numbers, or you want to add number of attendees at a conference whatsoever. You might not know the exact number. Maybe 250 people RSVP'd and 400 people show up. right? So you might not know how many people that you want to put in there. That's when you use the ArrayList function right here, right? The ArrayList functions as an array, but also acts as a list. Okay, so if you remember as a list in Python, that looked like, one second here, pointer options. Okay, that looked like, so you have the list and then you have the two square brackets you can repeatedly add to it. So this behaves like that, not like a tuple. So this means that you can add to the array list indefinitely, and it'll increase in size with each element. And if you add to it, if you don't specify the position to add in the array list, it'll always add at the end of the array every time that you add an element. So in Java, the way that you declare this, so you have array list, that's the type, array list name, right? So what you're going to name it, so you're declaring that this is an array list type, array your name for it, and then equals new array list, and then type. So this would be your data type right here. Okay, so I'm going to put on my pen back, pen. This would be data. Right. So in the type portion, you declare the type of the elements. So that would be, and then over here would be data as well. You know what? I'm going to plug in my drawing tablet for my next screencast here because I have them and I should probably use them. Anyway, array list. So right here, how this would look like, this would be an array list, and then it's string classes equals new array list, and then we obviously have to add the string, and don't forget your two parentheses at the end. So when we're adding to an array list, in an array, we use the array position equals element syntax as well. So this would be that's an array. So an array list that's a little bit different because we can always add, and it'll add at the end of it. So array list, we use the ArrayList.add method. So right here is our method. Okay, there's our method, and so this is our syntax. So ArrayList.add element syntax. So this is an advantage with an array list, as this constantly increases the size of the array. So if like you had 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 positions, and they're all filled, right? What's going to happen? So say this is 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8. If we use the add, this is going to be the 5th element, right? And then we're going to call this 1. Okay? So this is adding right here at the end. So it goes all the way to the end of the array list and ends there. In case you guys haven't grasped it, I really like the 5th element. We could cult classic. If we're accessing elements in ArrayList, ArrayLists are a little bit different than arrays. Rather than using the name element method of accessing elements, there's a little different syntax. We have to use the get method. We have to use this get method right here. So this would be the ArrayList name, and then get element. So this would be classes.get, and then the element that we're trying to access. So this brings us to your next project, creating an array using keyboard input. So what you're going to do is you're going to initialize an array called favorite classes. Your array needs to be 5 elements in size. You need to input your favorite classes in order, and you need to print out your array using the following strings. And so I've used my examples here. My favorite class is computer science. My second favorite class is social studies. My third favorite class is biology. My fourth favorite class is chemistry. My fifth favorite class is physics. So you have to follow that syntax, that format with the printouts. Make sure that you are using an array, not an array list. okay? And that you're taking user inputs. I will be live on the Q&A later today, as well as I will be available to meet on Zoom. So make sure that you guys are present for class, and then you can watch this video at any time. And until next time.